has allowed herself to become part of a trafficking ring?
Well, I'm afraid that is the truth. You don't lose 5 classrooms of children unless you have catastrophically failed to safeguard them. And my question to the Home Secretary is, what legal power do you have to move children in this way? I'm somebody with legal expertise. I don't see a power on the statute book.
Sorry, though, when you say to move them in this way, she isn't handing them over to the traffickers. What do you mean when you say in this way?
She's moving the children, often from Kent to Brighton and Hove, and to
without necessary safeguarding in place.
Without the legal power to move the children. Okay. We have a system in place called the National Transfer Scheme that is meant to mean that any child that arrives without their parents and who is seeking our protection, sometimes fleeing the most horrific violence overseas, is supposed to be immediately placed in foster care around the country. And the whole point of that system is to say that local authorities must share this responsibility. And
safeguard children.
Exactly. And we recognise that these children are so vulnerable, they are so liable to exploitation that they must be promptly placed. We're talking within hours. And that's how the system is meant to work, not that they're shunted off to Brighton and Hove city council area and then abandoned without proper social services involvement, without proper safeguarding. But let me be clear, Sheila, because the responsibility lies with the Home Secretary, but it also lies with the Green administration here in Brighton and Hove, because they have been utterly complacent. They have shown total disregard, and they have presided over industrial scale child neglect as a result, which is why the Labour group on the City Council is now calling for the Green leader of the council and the deputy leader of the council to go.
You're using very strong language.
Says,
Spice Girls.
Yes. Which Scottish actor and comedian adopted his stage name as a tribute to the jazz musician John Coltrane? And Ian says,
sorry, it's gone. No, sorry.
It's Robbie Coltrane.
Oh, I know.
-1. In 2020, which British rapper dropped the word Tampa from his stage name? Shanine.
Tiny.
That's right. The DJ Awards, a celebration of electronic music, are held annually on which Spanish island? Shanine says,
Ibiza.
And she is right. What is the largest instrument in a standard string quartet? George.
Cello.
You're right. Which classical record label shares its name with the moon of Saturn, discovered in 1848, and a titan of Greek mythology? George.
Kronos.
Oh no, it's Hyperion, -1. Which 1991 single by The Prodigy was inspired by a cartoon cat in a series of public information films for children? Shanine says,
Charlie.
For a point. Which instrument did Tommy Lee play in the band Motley Crue, Shanine?
Drums.
Oh, yes. And finally, in the Otis Redding song, where in California was he sitting on the dock of the bay? It was San Francisco. So let's see who's sitting on the top of the scoreboard as I reveal the result of this heat of Counterpoint. Third with 11 points, Ian Sanders. Runner-up with 17 points, George Spann. And our winner with 21 points is Shanine Salmon. Congratulations, Shanine Salmon. It means you'll be back for the semifinals in the spring. And well done, the other two of you, for giving us such an entertaining contest. We'll welcome another 3 music lovers to play Counterpoint next week. I hope you'll join us. Until next time, from everybody here, goodbye.
And if you'd like the details of any of the music you heard in today's quiz, you'll find it all listed on the Counterpoint pages on the Radio 4 website. Counterpoint is chaired by Paul Gambaccini and produced by Paul Bajoria. The food programme investigates the boom in single malt sales. Can whisky make you a fast buck, or is it a case of buyer beware? That's in a moment. Just a quick reminder of our brand new thriller, which starts later this week on Radio 4. What's the truth behind the legend of Ong's Hat? Is it really a dimensional getaway? The incident at Ong's Hat starts on Radio 4 and on BBC Sounds on Friday at 2:15.
BBC Sounds.
Is Batman actually a baddie?
Wayne Enterprises have a huge carbon footprint.
What's really going on with Marvin Gaye?
The moment you play it, everyone's raising eyebrows.
Was Cleopatra a snake or a saviour?
She's manipulated Roman leaders. Maybe she had a great personality.
I'm Russell Kane and this is Evil Genius. It's where I join a panel of comedians to reveal surprising things about historical icons. Not even the hobbits are safe.
I'm on board.
Have you dated any? Evil Genius with me, Russell Kane. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Well, now on the food programme, Jager Wise and producer Robbie Armstrong explore the rapid growth of cask whisky investment and what it means for the world of Scotch.
I've worked in this industry for quite some time, and one thing I absolutely love is that it's still very well preserved, very original. Do give us a call, either by getting the brochure, by calling the number.
Hello and welcome to the food programme, that place for hungry minds, with me, Jager Wise. Today we're popping off the bung and taking a closer look inside the opaque world of whisky cask investment and the commodification of Scotch whisky. The sales pitch you've just heard? Well, that's from a video featured on a whisky cask investment company's website. The voice? Well, that's Casey Alexander, arrested by the FBI last year on a charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in an international scheme that allegedly involved convincing elderly US citizens to invest their life savings in casks of whiskey and wine. The three companies operated a complicated web of businesses that swindled more than £10 million from at least 150 people, federal investigators allege. The case of Casey Alexander aside, in this programme, we'll find out why industry figures are becoming increasingly uneasy about the growing number of cask investment companies trading in the UK today. But first, producer Robbie Armstrong and I sat down to a chat about the world of private cask sales over a few drams. So what have you got here, Robbie?
We're at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in Leith, the Vaults, so very sort of grand setting. The Port of Leith, a historic part of Scotland's whisky story, if you will. In front of us we have Bruichladdich. My mum moved to Bruichladdich about 13-14 years ago. Before that, didn't know anything about whisky. Then someone introduced me to Bonnahaven. Had Bonnahaven, that was it, everything clicked. The first time that I noticed private cask sales, I was at Kilchoman, which is one of my favourite distilleries. It's a farm distillery, and there was a guy from the north of England, and he was chatting to Anthony Wills, who's the master distiller and the owner of Kilchoman, and he was basically checking in on the status of his private cask that he bought, and Anthony Wells went and got him some samples and basically said to the guy, I'll buy the cask back from you, you know, why don't we come to an agreement here, I'll offer you X amount. The guy was like, no, I'm holding. So that seemed like a fairly innocent thing really, because there was this nice relationship between the client and the distillery. It was healthy, it was very transparent, there was a conversation going on, he could come and visit and taste it.
Yeah, that coming.
But that was when I started to notice these adverts, private cask investment companies, and you were getting targeted ads all over the shop offering like huge returns. And I started to think, it seems too good to be true, they're offering too much and it seems a bit murky.
It's this concept of the investment, because I think I also get a lot of these ads as well, and I was thinking about it. I was thinking about, oh, should I put some money aside to perhaps buy a cask? But I thought, oh, I don't know, it's a huge amount of money, but they're targeting you as well.
They're targeting anyone who's ever Googled whiskey. The thing about a whiskey cask, if you buy it, really it's designed to be drunk. It's not a speculative asset. We can pretend it is, that it's something to be traded, and it can be traded, but ultimately it's a product that's designed to be drunk. You know, the distillers made that for someone to enjoy, and that's ultimately what it is. So it does make me feel a little bit uneasy, like it's a little bit of a house of cards.
So what attracts people to invest their savings in cask whisky? Robbie went to meet Jennifer Rose from the Whiskey Sisters podcast to find out.
There certainly was a romantic side of, you know, my personality, loving whiskey and thinking there was something quite fun about that. That maybe sounds a wee bit carefree, but I think the things I'd been reading gave me a sense of sort of confidence and excitement that it was potentially a real area that there would be risk in, but certainly there was potentially going to be lots of benefits to it as well. I was in touch with cask investment agencies based out of London that were phoning me, sending glossy brochures, very actively, endeavouring to engage me in a sale. There was often an urgency in what they were saying. If you want to, have the opportunity for this cask, it will need to be very quick. So it was probably at that stage that the sales tactics felt very aggressive. My increasing sense of unease was coupled with me looking into Companies House. What I was noticing was a pattern of quick turnover of directors, companies that were kind of live and open for a couple of years and then changing names, and I decided to take a complete step back at that stage. I advised some of the companies I'd been engaging with that, I thank you for their time, but I wasn't going to invest at the current time. One of them, within the next breath, said, okay, would you like to invest in gold? And this was a company that was marketing themselves specifically as kind of whiskey experts, and that to me felt, very telling, and I was incredibly suspicious of them from there, and really glad I hadn't continued with a purchase with them. So I spoke to a friend who had a relative within the whiskey industry just to see were there any companies that they were aware of. I was given the name of 3 companies that I began to look into, one of which I did eventually buy a cask from.
We'll hear more from Jennifer later. But what do the experts make of the rapid growth of these companies promising quick returns? Here's Blair Bowman, a whisky consultant and broker based in Edinburgh. 1, 2, 3. Fabulous. We have. Are you ready, Blair? You ready for me?
All right.
Okay.
We're watching this train crash. It's hurtling down the track. We can all see what's going to come. It will really damage the industry. We've been in this cycle many times before. The whiskey industry has this boom and bust cycle economically, but we've also seen these scams appear previously.
Why shouldn't an external company buy and sell whiskey casks to profit?
I don't think there's a problem with that in its fundamental principle, but there's a problem if these companies are really skewing the prices to the point that the person making that purchase is never going to see a return on their investment in their lifetime or even their grandchildren's lifetime. If this company that they bought from goes AWOL completely and the telephone dies and the emails bounce back, it's going to be very hard to prove that that cask is your asset, because a lot of these companies are only issuing what's called a certificate of ownership, which is essentially worthless, and if that company vanishes, they're going to be left high and dry, and that's one of my big fears about this.
You've investigated some of these companies who we won't name for legal reasons. What did you discover?
Several of these directors of these companies have been involved in wine scams in the 2000s. That was when the red flags and the alarm bells really started to ring for me. They were selling people, cases of wine, parcels of wine under bottles, but then what was happening is that these companies were reselling that same bottle or case of wine multiple times to multiple people. And eventually it all came out in the wash. And these individuals have now moved into the whiskey game. I mean, I've also had examples recently quite tragically. I was contacted by a family of someone who died in a skiing accident, and they didn't realise that just a few months before that accident, he purchased about 5 or 6 casks from one of these so-called whiskey cask investment companies. This gentleman, I think, had paid something like £60,000 or £70,000. The best offer I could get from a trade buyer to kind of help this family was £15,000 for exactly the same casks.
Why shouldn't the public get involved, or should they get involved in trading whiskey? Is there an element of gatekeeping?
A long time ago, let's say in the 70s and 80s, it was kind of family friends and large estates and houses that would buy a cask from the distillery owner. It was a kind of an old boys club, let's say. I think that's kind of changed in the new wave of new distilleries that we've seen. A lot of them needed some extra injections of cash, so created really fantastic, in my opinion, cask clubs. But I think that's quite different from this other world that we've been talking about, which is purely, specifically about flipping. And I think that's where this is all going to crumble apart. Because these companies are bringing in so many new inquiries all the time, if someone is looking to exit just now, they could, in theory, just flip it onto the next hunter at more than the person just paid for it. So they might be making a small return, but that can only last so long until that falls apart. I don't think that's a sustainable business model, and I don't think it's an ethical business model either.
And so, to Edinburgh's Hollywood Distillery to hear about their private cask programme, which offers a direct, transparent relationship with the distillery and your whiskey throughout the maturation process.
My name is Peter Adams, and I'm one of the distillers at Holyrood Distillery.
How curious are the customers who buy your casks?
I think very, very curious, because most distilleries wouldn't be as transparent about their process as we are. Anytime I've done a bespoke tour or tasting for people around here, when I get the chance, people are absolutely chomping at the bit to hear about the cask program.
Is quite old, so it's the final piece of the Innocent Railway line, so it's got this kind of like long... Hi, I'm Lucy Garrity and I'm the Commercial Partnerships Manager at Holyrood Distillery.
So how does it work?
So we have our private cask program, which is for your average person. They can buy a cask from us and we keep that in our warehouse, and that's their cask of whiskey. And then we also have kind of more partner production, which is essentially the same but larger volumes. So these are our new makes from 2022. So we've got our lightly peated and our heavily peated. So it's been cut back once it comes off the still, but it is still quite hefty.
Still quite hefty. Why have you decided to go down there, I don't want the public to make money particularly off our cask, over investors essentially?
Investments are kind of tricky topic. Obviously there's risk involved with investment, and we're a young distillery, we haven't launched our first whiskey yet, so we don't want to make promises that we can't keep. It's really fairly simple. If people are interested in us and want to support us, then they can do that with our cask program, but we can't commit to something now that we might not be able to do, or that might not come true for Holyrood in the future. We launched our first cask offer in 2019, and the questions that we're being asked now have definitely changed, so people are interested in where the cask is going to be stored, if they can visit it and that type of thing, and we didn't used to get that question. I think part of the trust comes from knowing who you're buying from and where that's going to be. So if you buy a cask from us, we make it and then we store it in our warehouse, so it's with us the whole time. There are people who have it for special occasions, so they've got it for their daughter turning 18 or their son's wedding or things like that. So I think it will be really amazing to see how Holyrood's involved in like our cask owners' lives.
I've been told generally by the internet that I'm going to make a fortune on whiskey if I invest correctly. As a whiskey expert, tell me, where should I put my money?
My advice would be not to believe everything you read on the internet.
There are so many rogue players in this industry that may appear entirely legitimate, but you've just got to be very careful. My name's Mark Littler and I'm an independent whiskey broker and consultant. My number one top tip about cask investment would be to make sure that you get a delivery order, and this advice is also echoed by the Scotch Whisky Association. The reason why a delivery order is so important is that it will transfer the ownership from the seller into your name at the warehouse where that cask is lying, which means that you have full autonomy and control over that cask. And more importantly, you've got physical proof that that cask exists. My second top tip would be to make sure that you're paying a fair price for the cask. My final tip about cask investment would be to familiarise yourself with the legislation that governs cask ownership. When you ask for a delivery order, it's quite common that somebody will tell you that you need what's known as a WOWGR. Now this is a very good way to spot a scam, because Excise Notice 196 section 5.1 clearly states that if you're a private individual owning just a few casks, then there's no need for you to be on the WOWGR registration scheme. So if somebody's telling you this, either it's an outright scam and the casks don't exist and there's no cask to transfer, or they're misleading you and they don't even understand the legislation which is governing their business. So most recently I'm involved in a dispute where a family has purchased around £1 million worth of casks, and there's two levels of fraud that have gone on here. First of all, the purchase price of the casks has been massively inflated. Over 100% has been added onto the real value of these casks. The second element is that the family doesn't even own these casks. They have no title to them at the warehouses that they're being stored in. They're simply on certificates that have been issued from a third-party company who, when you do some digging, have gone into liquidation in the past and then reformed. Recently I dealt with an elderly gentleman, and he owned a very good cask of whiskey and contacted me for a valuation, and I said, sure, give me a couple of days and I'll come back to you. In the meantime, unfortunately, he contacted another broker. They took him out to dinner, gave him some whiskies, convinced him that his cask was worth £30,000 and got him to sign the contract there and then. When I contacted him a few days later to say that the cask was worth between £100,000 and £200,000, he wasn't able to back out of the sale. And when he approached the distillery where the cask was being held, despite them initially saying yes, it's no problem to cancel the sale, I can only assume that under legal pressure they buckled and then let the cask sale go through, which means that that gentleman now unfortunately was given £30,000 for a cask that was realistically worth close to £200,000.
Mark Littler. The world of whisky investment risks impacting consumers as well as trade. We visited Peter Allison at his Leith blending house Woven to chat about the problems his young business faces getting its hands on casks.
This is Woven Experience number 11. It's called Peachy. Very big glass.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
I see why you called it peachy. Very fruity.
The long and the short of it is that the cask whisky market has blown up from being either whisky blenders and independent bottlers or high net worth individuals that are purchasing whisky for their own consumption into a transactional commodity that has really catapulted the price of not very exciting whiskies into the stratosphere. It's a bubble right now. So there's whiskey being bought and passed on from hand to hand, increasing in price but never leaving the cask. And eventually the price will reach a limit and people won't pay any more for a not very old unknown distillery that would normally go into blending, and the buyer who bought it last will be very disappointed.
You're essentially priced out from using it in a blend.
We're priced out all the time now, even a year on. We can't really afford some of those whiskies that we used in our first collection, purely because they've been bought and bought again. And so we're seeing the same casks on lists, but they're now 3, 4, 5 times the cost that they were when we first purchased. There's a danger of it becoming an elitist drink. I don't know if it is there already. I think that it's definitely moving in that direction. You see some of these bottles that are dripped in gold, as it were. They're pandering to the ultra high net worths. That's the goal of some of these companies, to be able to reel in incredibly rich people. But I would like to ensure that my friends, my kids, are able to enjoy good whiskey still. And I think that they will, because I honestly think there's going to be a burst of a bubble eventually, and we'll be sitting there going, remember when whiskey was the it drink?
If I want to make my fortune in whiskey, what are some of the things I need to look out for?
I don't think you should make your fortune in whiskey. I think you should drink whiskey. I think that's the piece that most people forget about this whole conversation, is that we're making a drink. We're making a spirited drink that tastes yummy, that brings people together, that has a huge history and love around the world. It shouldn't be bought and sold as an asset. It is. I don't have any tips for anybody, because honestly I don't know what's going to be expensive tomorrow rather than today. If we're looking at it optimistically, then it's fledgling, and if we're looking at it pessimistically, then it's a money grab that could flash and burn very quickly. I think it's just too risky. If I was an individual to buy casks of whiskey, I couldn't do it.
In April last year, a cask of Macallan was sold at auction for a record-breaking £1 million. Then in July, a cask of Ardbeg went for a cool 60 million. If you think that's expensive, how about a single bottle of Macallan selling for £1.5 million in 2019? But with high-profile sales comes high-profile thefts too. Last year, we saw break-ins at 2 distilleries, Glenfarclas and Aberlour, as well as Tullabarden in 2021. On each occasion, thieves made off with high-value bottles of single malt.
My name is Callum Fraser. I'm the production manager at Glenfarclas Distillery. Glenfarclas is the oldest family-run distillery left in Scotland. We are owned by the Grant family. Our current chairman, John, is the 5th generation of the family to run the business. They bought the business back in 1865, paid £511, 19 shillings for it, which in today's money is about £300,000. And when you think there's people buying bottles of whisky for that sort of price, then it's been quite a good investment.
A targeted raid on a Speyside Distillery's visitor centre, Glenfarclas.
I was awoken by a chap at the door about 7 o'clock in the morning by one of our staff to say that the visitor centre door was open. They drilled the locks out, forced their way in, and had broken into the cabinet that holds what we call our family cask range of whiskies from 1953 through to 2006. They stole the oldest whisky in there, so the total value was over £150,000. And it is quite frustrating when you think you live in a little community like Glenfarclas with 6 or 7 houses, that somebody feels they can come and intrude, break in, steal, and run away with it, family silver, you might say. The whisky that we think may have ended up in the black market, we don't think the MD will take it straight to auction sites to sell it. We've obviously beefed up our security a lot since then. We had CCTV and alarm systems. We've improved that a huge amount as well. It's the first time our visitor centre's 50-year-old this year, and that's the first time in 49 years we've had MD break in or attempt to break in. I think there's a good chance they're all linked. Part of the reason that this is now happening, my personal opinion, is that people are now seeing all these adverts for how much you can make off a bottle of whiskey or a cask of whiskey or whatever it is, and they think it's a quick buck to make and it's worth lots of money. But the damage they cause, the upset while they're doing it. But yes, I do believe some of these things will be linked. But I think they're linked more so to the publicity that surrounds this magical whisky investment wagon that lots of people are on right now. So if there's anybody out there who hears this interview, if they have heard or saw or their memory gets jogged by listening to me speaking, if they would like to come to us and let us know or contact the police, that would be very much appreciated.
With sales of luxury whisky growing year on year, the number of counterfeits entering the secondary market has also increased. Here's Isabel Graham-Yule from Whisky.Auction on the measures her team takes to sniff out the fakes.
We probably sell between 1,000 to 2,000 bottles per month, and each bottle that arrives into us is potentially one of the most magnificent bottles we've ever come across, or it could also be entirely fake. So we inspect each one, and that involves, for instance, in checking that the closure is intact. The bottle will be of a certain sort, so we check the bottle shape, the type of glass, the base, the manufacturer's codes, the paper of the label, the printing type. We have examples of whiskies that were produced 70 years ago as fake. There are also examples of more recent forgeries or refills when the value of a bottle has increased so much and someone has access to an empty bottle. If you look on eBay, where they don't allow the selling of whiskey, and search for empty whiskey bottles, be astonished at the prices that are achieved for empty bottles. I know for a fact that no one really needs a £300 empty bottle of whiskey unless they're going to refill it and do something dastardly with it. My concerns about the cask investment market are, there are several concerns, to be honest. A lot of those companies haven't been around for very long. They may well consider themselves to be extremely honest and have an exemplary track record, but that would be quite a short track record. What you get for your money is an IOU for a cask. How much do you trust whoever you're buying from to still be around when you want to cash in that IOU? If you're paying someone for a cask of whiskey that you plan to make money out of in the future, the seller needs to be honest. The seller needs to be financially viable, not just now, but in the future. The cask needs to be in great condition, from a great brand. You have to have bought it at the right price. The market needs to be favourable at the point that you decide to sell it. That's just a snapshot of a few of the things that need to go in your favour.
Back at Jennifer Rose's flat in Glasgow, she's mulling over her investment and the lessons she's learned from her experience.
So I actually have a sample of the cask that I bought. So sherry cask finish. There's lovely sweetness, lovely fruity notes. When I purchased the cask, I was given some documents, including a cask certificate of title. However, it does say on the document, this document is not a delivery order and cannot be used to transfer ownership. As I spent a little bit more time having conversations with different industry experts, my original concerns around not having a delivery order were very much ignited again, and it became a point of concern. And despite having the certificate that looks very pretty, became concerned that it might not be enough should the worst happen. Reflecting on my experience, I sold my cask. I didn't lose any money. So in that sense, feel really happy with that. However, I can't help but feel, have I had a lucky escape? There are a lot of horror stories around, and hopefully we won't hear too many more of them. We'll need to watch this space.
At the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, Robbie and I are finishing off our drams and pondering premiumisation, commodification and flipping rare bottles of whisky.
This is a bottle of Lagavulin for their 200th anniversary, and I bought it for 125 quid, and it is now averaging about £580.
I'm going to be honest here, Robbie. It sounds like whiskey is more than just a drink. It is a potential money-making opportunity.
You definitely can make money. I guess the thing is that for every one of these bottles, there's a bottle that doesn't make money. And you know, I bought a bottle of Kilcommon. It didn't really make any money. So you know, I opened it, I did like a charity whiskey tasting, and I enjoyed it with like-minded people. We donate the money to charity. We've got another bottle here, which is Springbank Local Barley. This cost about £85–90. When that first came out, it was going for like 800 quid online. It's come back down and it's now averaging £605. But you'll notice the bottle. What have I done with that?
And it is drunk.
I've opened that, I've drunk it, and I've shared it with people I love, because ultimately I think that is what these things are. This one I have in this Bruichladdich, the Lagavulin, the Springbank. You should never buy a cask of whiskey that you're not ultimately, if things go wrong, not willing to just drink and share with friends. And the same with any rare whiskey. Always be willing to just open it and drink it, because that's what they're made for. You know, they're products of people and place, and they're meant to be enjoyed with the people you love.
Robbie, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. I think where we're seeing fantastic drinks to be drunk, other people are seeing pound signs. And to be honest with you, with a markup like that, I'm not surprised.
I turned up to a Springbank release at a whiskey shop in Glasgow. It was starting at 10, I turned up at 5 to 10. There was 200 people already outside queuing for Springbank, and I felt like such an idiot. And I think actually seeing all of this pent-up demand and this speculation on whiskey, it was almost becoming like crypto. It made me just want to open the bottles that I have that are rare. It changed the way I think about it.
Hang on a minute. So you saw the money had gone up on your whiskey, so you decided to open them and drink them?
Yeah, I think it's a statement.
There's something wrong with you, Robbie. That's not normal.
But you'll notice the Lagavulin isn't open.
It's true.
You know, so I don't do this with every bottle, but there is a statement to be made. You open it as I guess it's a riposte to the people that would sell it just to make money, buy it just to make money.
While the allure of putting money into whiskey continues to grow for some, these investments are far from risk-free. As the whiskey investment bubble grows, there's been a rapid growth in new firms with little to no track record in the industry. And while there are many perfectly legitimate cask investment companies out there, if you're being promised returns that seem too good to be true, perhaps they are. Some experts are calling for increased regulation, but the Scotch Whisky Association told us that as a trade association which represents producers, it's not within their remit to regulate the cask investment market. They've published guidance available on their website on what to consider when personally investing in a cask of Scotch whisky. The truth is, there is no regulated market for casks, no officially published list of buying and selling prices, and no established mechanism for selling either. And you don't have to look far for salutary lessons on the perils of putting your money in whiskey. In the 1990s, 2,000 people were conned out of almost £4 million after being promised huge returns on casks of Bradley. The problem? It had closed its doors in 1909, and the conman in question had nothing to do with the distillery. In recent years, Tasmania's Nant whisky scandal promised investors juicy returns, but barrels went missing and investors were left thousands of dollars out of pocket. One cask investment company has been listed on the financial regulator's consumer alert list, and several have vanished as quickly as they've emerged. A cask of whiskey might be worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it, but what happens when there is no longer another happy buyer waiting to join the line? As ever, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Besides, isn't whiskey made for drinking?
The food programme was presented by Jager Wise and produced by Robbie Armstrong. And while we're on the subject,
The Kitchen Cabinet, Radio 4's culinary panel show.
It is the taste of childhood.
Here to delight and challenge your taste buds.
It's got this gorgeous kind of quite thin crust, but it's kind of got just the right amount of chewiness, and then it's soft and yielding.
We do love soft and yielding.
We love soft and yielding.
This time we take the Kitchen Cabinet to Tring, Slough, Tamworth, Cardiff, Grimsby and Manchester to answer all your food and cooking questions. How do you get the icing in a cupcake?
You ask it nicely. No, I'm joking.
The new series of the Kitchen Cabinet on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, starting next Saturday morning at 10:30.
BBC News at 4 o'clock. It's been announced that the Commissioner of Public Appointments will review the process for hiring the BBC chairman, Richard Sharp. He's accused of facilitating a loan guarantee worth up to £800,000 for the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, just weeks before being selected for the role by the government. He denies giving Mr Johnson any financial help. The Labour MP Sir Chris Bryant chairs the Common Standards Committee.
Successive governments, Labour and Conservatives, have often appointed somebody who is sort of loyal to their party as chairman of the BBC. I've not got a problem with that, though I've always felt the BBC should be completely independent of politics whatsoever, and I have said that historically when it was a Labour government, and I would say it now when it's a Conservative government.
Rishi Sunak has asked his independent ethics advisor to look into Nadim Zahawi's tax affairs after it emerged the Conservative Party chairman paid a fine to HM Revenue and Customs to settle a multi-million-pound dispute. The Prime Minister says there are questions that need answering. Mr Zahawi says he wasn't trying to avoid tax and that he made a careless mistake. An asylum seeker from Afghanistan has been found guilty of murdering a man in a row about an electric scooter. Alangeen Abdurrahmanzai, who's 21, admitted stabbing Tom Roberts in Bournemouth last year, but claimed he didn't intend to cause serious harm. After delivering its verdict, the jury at Salisbury Crown Court was told that Abdurrahmanzai had murdered 2 people in Serbia in 2018. A man has been found guilty of robbing the elite cyclist Mark Cavendish and making off with luxury watches worth £700,000. 31-year-old Romaro Henry from South East London had denied raiding the sportsman's home in Essex at the end of 2021 when a knife was held to the rider's throat. Another man had already admitted involvement in the robbery. Football. In the past hour, the Premier League strugglers Everton have sacked the former England midfielder Frank Lampard as their manager. He'd been in charge for less than a year and suffered his 9th defeat in 12 league games at the weekend. BBC News.
Lily Ebert was 20 when the Nazis deported her from her Hungarian hometown to Auschwitz. At 4:30 she tells Ali Makbul how she held on to her faith in the most horrific circumstances. Beyond belief is in half an hour. But now the actor Jade Anuka explores the challenges of performing Hamlet in playing the prince.
Okay,
You ready?
let's give it a go, shall we?
Every Hamlet stands or falls on his own.
The first time I saw Hamlet was in 2009 at the RSC, and David Tennant was playing the Dane. I thought, what a part. I immediately wanted to play that. That's the dream.
Look at Uncle come. Till then, sit still, my soul.
It was about the fact that you get to go into the mind of this character and really try and decipher what's going on in the human mind and how we think about things and how we are very good at inaction, some of us, especially thinkers.
Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth o'erwhelm them to men's eyes.
It is the anvil that you get hammered on as an actor. It's like the birth of character, really. I don't know, something grows up in Hamlet.
I'm Jade Anuka, I'm an actor, and I want to play Hamlet. I'm going to talk to other actors who've played the prince about what makes it so challenging and why it's still seen as a high point of any actor's career. And I've also heard a rumour that there's a secret red book. A copy of the play that's been passed from actor to actor for more than 100 years to the finest Hamlet of the next generation. Even in acting circles, the red book is thought to be legend. So, does it exist? Is there something written in it that unlocks the secrets of the play? And how do I get my hands on it?
Scholars and soldiers, give me one poor request. What is, my lord? We will never make known what you have seen tonight.
Laurence Olivier himself was rumoured to have once been its keeper.
There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
And Olivier is a good place to start because his 1948 black and white film of Hamlet is a classic. I love Olivier. His Hamlet was brilliant, but it's incomparable to what my Hamlet would be like. I don't know if there have been any queer black female Hamlets, and if there have, not from South East London and not with my history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What is Hamlet about, anyway? Well, it's a revenge story. Hamlet is a Danish prince whose father dies while he's away at university. And he returns to find his mother, less than 2 months after his father's death, is about to marry his uncle.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
Then his father's ghost appears and tells him Hamlet's uncle actually murdered him. And he wants Hamlet to take revenge by killing him.
And now I'll do it. And so he goes to heaven, and so am I revenged.
And that's how it all kicks off.
A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do this same villain send to heaven.
How do you make this part your own when everyone has done it? Sam West played Hamlet in the 2001 RSC production.
It's a part that a lot of people want to play, for very good reasons. Because everybody thinks they're good casting. You know, the wit is going to be the funniest, and the philosopher is going to be the deepest, and the athlete is going to be the best swordsperson. And they're all right, in a way, but they'll all get one or more bits wrong, because as a part, it brings you up against your own physical and emotional limitations really quite quickly, and keeps you there for the whole run. So when people say, did you like playing Hamlet? My usual answer is I liked having played him, but at the time it was really hard.
Sir Derek Jacobi first played Hamlet as an 18-year-old schoolboy in 1956.
I've still got pictures of the school production, with me as the gloomy Dane. It's the personality role. You're not being somebody else, you're being you as Hamlet.
Jacobi has played Hamlet over 400 times, last playing it almost 40 years ago, but it's still fresh in his mind.
It is huge, and I found problems with most of it, I suppose. But it was also, it taught me as an actor how to conserve energies. You have to gauge what comes next, how you're going to get from one stepping stone to the next. Otherwise, you'd exhaust yourself, physically and vocally and mentally. And that teaches you, I think, a great deal about stagecraft. The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
I keep hearing how Hamlet is such an exposing role, that the actor cannot help but flavour their Hamlet with themselves. And my Hamlet would be modern because 150, even 10 years ago, you wouldn't have a Hamlet on stage that looked like me. But in a way, that's why actors are attracted to him, because he seems so modern. And Adrian Lester, who played Hamlet in Peter Brook's production, thinks he always was.
Well, Shakespeare's put a very modern Elizabethan thinker in the middle of what should be a straightforward revenge drama. And because Hamlet is asking the questions of the audience, he's almost in a way stopping the play, going, oh, hold on, wait. Why? He's asking that question. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom. There is a sort of common joke that if Hamlet were Othello and Othello were Hamlet, both plays would be over in 15 minutes. If you went to Hamlet and said, my lord, I think I've seen your wife with Cassio, and blah, blah, Hamlet would go, really? What? Really? I'll ask my wife. No, don't ask her. Just take my wife. No, I'm going to ask her. And then after a bit of investigation, play's over. Or if he'd gone to Othello and said, I am your father's ghost and I was killed by your uncle, the uncle would be dead within 10 minutes. End of play. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. Hamlet's dad is this famous warrior, and he appears to his son, who is a famous warrior, and says, Oi, revenge me. And Hamlet, who studied philosophy at Wittenberg, says, revenge? It's a bit un-Christian. We don't really do that anymore, do we? I always thought of him as being a bit miscast. It's like doing Gladiator and casting Woody Allen as Russell Crowe.
You can do it in so many ways. You can stress his insightful observations of life, or you can emphasize the beauty of his poetry, or You can show him as a man fighting himself in a mess of contradictory ideas. Where do you even start? Adrian Lester.
As you move toward doing it, you're invited by all books on Hamlet, and you're invited by people who've seen this production or that production. You're invited to take on board aspects of other people's performances. I remember reading yet another book on Hamlet. I kind of got halfway through and I just stopped, and I thought, all right, no more. No more, because some very brilliant scholars and actors will ask questions, but then they will give you their answers, they'll give you their interpretation. This is what it should be, this is what I saw so-and-so do, and it made so much sense to me that therefore that has to be the truth. And actually, no, there is no one truth.
I played Mark Antony in an all-female production of Julius Caesar and Hotspur in Henry IV. I found playing male roles liberating. Suddenly, I felt I could take up more space, vocally, physically, intellectually. I was driving the action of a play, not just responding to it. In the 2019 production at Leeds Playhouse, Tessa Parr's Hamlet was a young woman.
When you have a female Hamlet, you're watching a woman deal with her own violence, which is really rare. Yeah, it's liberating. It liberates the play. Have you eyes? You cannot call it love. For at your age, the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment. When she does come into her mum's bedroom and shows the two pictures, she's got one of her dad and she's got one of her uncle who her mum's just married, and she's saying, you know, like, how can you be having sex with this guy? Because you're too old. There's a difference, like a young woman saying that to like an older version of herself than a young man saying it to his mum when she's an older woman. There's such a difference, because you are, as a young woman, you're grappling with like, my mum can't have those urges because I want her to eternally love my dad. And so the ask is different when it's a male saying your sexuality is dead, you're too old. It's like filled with an aggression that is just so like rank. Whereas a man, that wouldn't be said to a king, would it? It wouldn't be said to a man.
It's fascinating hearing from other actors about how they tackled the role, but I'm still hopeful that if I can get my hands on the Red Book, the copy of Hamlet passed from actor to actor to the best Hamlet of the next generation, that it might give me some unique and profound insight. I asked Tessa if she'd come across it.
What is it?
And what about Sam West?
No, what is the Red Book?
No one seems to have heard of it.
Okay, you ready? Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew.
I think there are two basic ways of doing soliloquy: to yourself or to the audience. And paradoxically, we found that talking to the audience is the less untruthful version of what a soliloquy is, because it embraced the artificiality of the situation. I mean, if I go on and go, to me or not to me, somebody in the audience goes, speak up! And you go, why? Because I can't hear you. Well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to myself. Well, talk to yourself in a louder voice so I can hear you. Well, you're not there. But actually you are there, of course, so I might as well talk to you.
I tackled the speeches first. What I did to start with was that I would sit quietly in a room and I would whisper my way through the speeches, but I wouldn't read them for sense. I would just speak every word as if it were speaking like a clock. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve its... As I looked at this and I saw all of this too solid flesh a lot of people have, I realized straight away that it was sullied, it was dirty. Because the act of having something melt, thaw, and become a dew, that's distillation. That's a process of purifying water. So for me, it wasn't solid flesh. It wasn't about I'm too solid, I need to melt and thaw. It was I'm dirty. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. And as I picked up on that, I thought, Hamlet is aware that something terrible has happened to his bloodline. And in terms of something is rotten in the state of Denmark, in terms of the Elizabethan chain of being, it's God and angels and so on all above. And then you also have the king, queen, and everybody. They come above other people in Denmark.
In the same thing as you've got all of this extra, I guess, pressure and responsibility. Your friends haven't necessarily, and I can imagine that would have been, a little bit lonely as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely, because you feel, especially at that age, in anything, you feel like, oh my gosh, it's happening to me. I'm the only person in the world that feels this way, and even not knowing what the term young carer was. So had I known that term was a thing, I would have probably been able to identify and be, okay, I'm a part of this huge group. I may not know every single person, but there could be so many hidden people in my school or just in the general community that are young carers. So it definitely does make a difference when you do know that there's others there that probably are going through similar
experiences. And it feels like maybe, is that the driver for you starting You Can, is that I don't want anyone else to feel alone. I want them to know that they're not alone, and to have the support that maybe you wished you'd had from the start.
Yeah, absolutely, and something that effectively supports them because a lot of the time we assume what they want. Like you assume, okay, because you feel, okay, you're an adult, let me try and sort. But they're the experts. These young carers, they're the experts. They're almost, they're superheroes in their houses, and they know what they want. So a young person may be experiencing anxiety, and you need to support them with that. Someone may just want respite opportunities, and it's all dependent on what that young person wants and needs, because everybody's different. So it's very important to work with them and to identify them. So that's what
you're
trying
doing.
To do,
which is incredible, absolutely incredible. And and I guess you will be able to relate to them because you've been through that experience. And we mentioned earlier that you were in school at the time that you're doing this. So you're studying, you're supporting your family members, and you've now started this charity as well. How do you balance everything?
That's a question I ask myself. I'm trying to, I think in the new year, I've kind of taken an approach to just look after myself in a way. I mean, right now I'm in a fortunate time in my life where things are very stable in my family right now, but I'm definitely, I have the opportunity now to really take care of myself, and I've known that if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of others, and that's something that we try to encourage as much as we can, because we know the hurdles, that it is very hard. It's easier said than done to say to somebody, oh, look after yourself, and it's not easy, especially to carers and young carers specifically. So it's just very important to try and find that self-care in a way, whether it's reading a book to yourself for 30 minutes in a day, or going for a walk, or just listening to music, or just anything like that. Self-care is very important.
It is, and you make some great points. You're an incredible young woman. What would you say to someone thinking about nominating in this category, and what should they be looking for in a person who they want to nominate?
I think, in my head, I mean, everyone's deserving. Everyone's deserving. If you recognise somebody, whether it's your friend, whether it's a neighbour, whether it's somebody you go to work with, or someone that you think is, I just think it's, I don't know, it's on the person. It's just, because personally, I just feel like if you recognise that, go for it, sign them up. Sign them up. I would have no idea, like, I'm happy on the BBC talking to you. So it's like, if you truly believe that this person does the work and, is truly inspiring, if you're inspired by them, sign them up. Why not? Give them, the platform and the opportunity, because you never know what could come out of it.
Are you glad that someone nominated you now?
Yeah, definitely. Look at all the opportunities. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate, but it's not about that. It's about just giving any platform that I'm even given is just to highlight young carers, and I'm still also growing and learning as well, and highlighting other organisations that are doing tremendous work with young people. So so many Carers Trust, the Home Girls Unite, Social Arc, so many organisations. So I definitely would, any platform I have to just push young carers up.
Yeah, and well, we're glad to be able to give you a platform to celebrate you, because you are an incredible young woman. And I think that, you know, like you were saying, I think it's this, you mentioned there that young carers are essentially superheroes in their own homes,
Yes,
but they might go unrecognised.
Yeah.
And, you know, it can feel like no one sees them. It may feel a little bit like they're invisible. So it's, you know, an incredible thing to be able to shine a light on someone and say, no, we see everything that you've done. You're an incredible person. I'm saying this directly to you. And you're like, no, don't, Clara, stop. Take the compliments away. But a very deserving winner, Sanyu. And I feel like you'll go on to do incredible things. You've already, you know, achieved so much. You're already doing brilliant stuff. So just keep being you. Keep doing what you're doing. And thank you for being with us on the show.
Thank you so much.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure. That was Sanyu Masoke. Oh, quickly, Sanyu, before you go, for anyone listening who might want to find out more about You Can, where do they need to go?
Oh, our website. So we have a website called You Can, yucan.org.uk. And that's our website. Our social medias on Twitter and Instagram are at YUCAN_CIC, and that's where you find us. And yeah.
Brilliant. So for anyone who might think that they can offer Sanyu some help, or that they might know someone who's a young carer who's in East London who might need some support, then that's the place to go. And there are 8 categories in this year's BBC Radio London's Make a Difference Award. Earlier today, our very own Gabby Roslin told us about them.
So we've got volunteer. Now that's individual who makes a huge difference to the community, giving their time voluntarily, of course. Community group, that's a group of people who help genuinely change the lives of others. Then there's the fundraiser award, that's an individual or group. Carer, thank you to all the carers out there. Goodness me, really. A great neighbour. Now that
on politics, right? But this is the question, because you said about them marking their own homework. Okay, and basically when it comes to it, it's a question of, like, take for even an example for a councillor. Each councillor has against their profile gifts and hospitality.
Yes.
Okay, and I was recently looking at a well-known council of London, and their mayor had nothing against that in that profile. He didn't list anything, so I was like, oh, maybe like the legal side, he can't go that far into detail. But when it comes to a councillor, would you trust a councillor who's over the so far as an £8 box of hyacinth, okay? But when you found out that they haven't declared bigger gifts, doesn't that set questions alight as well?
Probably has less
not Heineken, hyacinth flowers.
Oh, hyacinths. I was going to say,
Yeah.
I thought £8. I'm not sure what you're getting. Are you getting a 6-pack? I'm not sure you can get a 6-pack for £8. Anyway, I think anyone who's diligent enough to do that probably has less to hide than the person who does nothing.
Do you think? Because I don't think. I'm thinking the other way. When you find out other things that they haven't declared, that you can earmark to Twitter, for example.
But this is what I don't. So now we're into the area that I really don't like, because now we're into the area of it just entire conjecture about someone's motives, motivations, and what's happening in the background. Now we're into well, because there's an absence of evidence, that means that they are guilty of something. I just think I don't like that at all. That's why I'm very careful about using the word corruption. That's a heck of a charge to make.
Yeah. But then I've read loads of documents that have been released by Transparency International UK, and they just scream with consistently. So, like, sometimes you have to look at it like that.
Well, no, I agree, and I think if we can all sit here as the electorate and as people paying into this through our taxes and say this stinks, there's no one here saying this doesn't stink. Even the Prime Minister is admitting that this smells. That's why he's referred it to his ethics advisor. So no one here is without their senses enough to think that this isn't a problem, and that may well be enough. It doesn't matter what the substance of the problem ends up being. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it stinks, and so much else has stunk that I do wonder whether it is calling time for a lot of people. It's just another thing for people to have to try and take leave of their senses of, in order to ignore, to try and cast their vote for the Conservatives at the next election, that they can't bring themselves to do it. Here's Kieran. Tom, you know the process here. The next thing that happens is Sunak expresses full confidence in Zahawi, who in turn then resigns due to distractions to the government, although I've done nothing wrong, etc., blah, blah, blah. And then within 12 months, he's back in a senior cabinet position. Same old, inherent and ingrained corruption across the Conservative government. And up until now, says Kieran, I've always voted for them. No more, he says. More of your calls to come. After the news,
it is going to look very strange indeed that the man who is chairing the BBC was, at the point when he was appointed to chair the BBC, also involved in advising the Prime Minister on a large financial loan.
The Commissioner for Public Appointments, William Shawcross, will review the competition which led to Richard Sharp's appointment as BBC chairman after reports he helped a previous Prime Minister secure a loan. Details to come. 4:30, news headlines, Amelia Cox.
Opposition parties are continuing to call for Nadeem Zahawi to step down as Conservative Party chairman. The Prime Minister has asked his ethics advisor to look into the former Chancellor's tax dispute with HMRC. The Public Appointments Watchdog will investigate Boris Johnson's recommendation for BBC chairman. It's claimed Richard Sharp helped the then Prime Minister secure a loan of £800,000 weeks before he was chosen for the role. Both men deny any wrongdoing. And Mark Cavendish and his wife say nothing can ever erase what our family went through after a man was found guilty of robbing them. The Olympic cyclist had a knife held to his throat as 31-year-old Romario Henry stole a number of high-value watches and other items. LBC weather, patchy light rain for some areas tonight. Clear spells elsewhere with cloud increasing in the southeast, a low of -4 degrees.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. only on LBC.
The very future of the UK as we know it
is in play. Mary Lou MacDonald is the leader of Sinn Féin. Do you think Brexit brings reunification closer?
I think Brexit certainly has deepened and accelerated the conversation on partition. For many people, the choice now looks kind of stark.
Tonight, with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
I'm Jenny Huntley, part of the dental hygiene team at the Darwin & Tanner Dental Practice. For the last 25 years, I have provided tailored preventative care and advice to our patients who have had advanced reconstructive dentistry. I am so proud to be working as part of a team focused on delivering outstanding patient care.
Darwin & Tanner, celebrating 30 years at the forefront of world-class dentistry.
To find out more and meet the team, start at darwinandtanner.co.uk.
The sweet sound of an SUV on an open road.
Oh, aye, but can it handle a muddy road? And what about off-road? The Dacia Duster is one SUV that can. Available as an actual 4x4, it'll take your family for an adventure without taking your wallet for a ride. Time for everything you need and nothing you don't. Dacia Duster.